Alright, what's going on, guys? Trev back again here to bring another video. This one's going to be answering a question. The question is a common question. I get it quite a bit in my channel, and it is, what is my favorite cartoon series of all time? Now, this question actually is very easy for me to answer. It's not difficult at all. I don't have to do much thinking. Throughout my life, obviously, watched a lot of cartoons, that kind of stuff, and they, for a while, were pretty much my favorite television shows. Growing up, there was some live action stuff, but it wasn't to my liking too much. I mean, I remember thinking that Buffy, the Vampire Slayer was okay. Shows like Angel, it was all right. You know, I don't know. There was quite a few shows growing up that I thought were pretty good, but there really isn't one that even comes close to The Walking Dead in terms of as much as I like it. My favorite television show ever, by far, has to be The Walking Dead. There's no question about it. There really is no comparison. Some other shows I've really been into, a lot of them are going to be cartoons. Like one of my favorites growing up, probably my favorite, I'd have to say, if I had to pick one, would be X-Men the Animated Series. During the 90s, growing up at that time, after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was sort of, you know, coming down after, it'd been on for like 8 or 9 years at that point. By the time X-Men came in, and you know, sort of took over as the, you know, the people that were watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when they were really young. Like when I was like 2 or 3, I was watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then all the way up to when I got to be about like 10 or 11 type thing. Then I started getting into X-Men the Animated Series, and I watched that so many times. I actually have that on DVD. It's one of the only cartoon series that I actively sought after and bought because I just like it so much. I think it's definitely one of my favorites. So that would probably be my favorite cartoons. That'd probably be number 2, but definitely The Walking Dead would be number 1. Other ones that I liked a lot, Batman the Animated Series, I thought was really well done. I actually like when they did like Batman and Robin Adventures, or Batman Superman Adventures, and they did the New Adventures of Batman. They changed it about after a few seasons and did a different art style and stuff. I like that too. And Superman the Animated Series didn't like too much. Just to be totally honest with you, I thought it was pretty good, but not the greatest thing ever. I thought it was just mediocre. It was okay. Going on from there, Dragon Ball Z has to be up there. Dragon Ball Z would probably be number 3, or yeah, that'd probably knock out number 2 for push X-Men the Animated Series number 3, and Dragon Ball Z would have to be number 2. Let's see, what else was there growing up? Dragon Ball Z, Batman Beyond was a very good cartoon series, underrated, I think. That's even one that I'll probably go back and watch sometime, you know, in the next couple of years, and probably do a video review for it, because I just think Batman the Animated Series is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic cartoon series. One of the best comic book character, and that character, Terry McGinnis, was created for that show. He never had a comic book before, and actually recently, last year, I think it was last year, they started releasing a comic book series for Batman Beyond, because they're like, well, you know, this is awesome, let's use it. Similar to how Harley Quinn was created in Batman the Animated Series, and then afterwards they started including her in comic books and video games and all that other stuff, that too. Let me see. So there's all those cartoons going on from there. Justice League was an amazing cartoon, man. That's one that I can go back and watch, you know, certain episodes from now. One of my favorite storylines from that one would have to be the well, there's a lot. There's Starcrossed. There's the one with Krona, who sort of goes back and forth in time. I love at the end of that episode where Batman puts him in a time loop and he just goes over and over and over again. You know, all the, like, just in a time loop. That's pretty awesome. I love that. Let's see. I'm not too big on cartoon I'm not too big on comedy cartoon shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, and South Park. Family Guy would probably be my favorite of any of the comedy ones, but like I said, I'm not too big of a comedy guy. I don't absolutely love it as much as I like action and other stuff like that. So, you know, as a result of that, you know, I'm not going to really be, you know, I'm not going to consider any comedy shows just because I'm not that big of a fan. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a good second series in the early 2000s. TMNT, I don't know if a lot of you guys have seen it. It's a really good cartoon show. It's actually closer to the comic books than the original Archie style Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that we knew from the 80s and early 90s. Those were actually their own interpretation, but the comic book Turtles were really, really dark. So the later cartoon in the early 2000s, you can watch on YouTube actually, is actually the closest interpretation to the true turtles and the way they were supposed to be. So that's got to be one of my favorites in there too. That cartoon, I actually like that more than the older one, even though the older one is magical, like, you know, but it's geared towards a different audience. You know, watching it when you're an adult, you don't get the same feeling as when you were a kid. You know, the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon is geared towards kids of that age, and you have to kind of be that age and have that kind of imagination to really get the fun of it. Otherwise, as an adult, you'll kind of be bored a little bit. But it's definitely not as enjoyable now as if you're a kid watching the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. So I don't know which would be my favorite out of the two. They're both awesome. I like watching the later one these days, but when I was a kid, I loved the old Turtles cartoon. Let's see, what else in the 2000s? After that, I kind of stopped watching TV for a long time. I didn't really watch too much at all. I'm trying to think if there's really anything else that I was interested in. Game of Thrones recently I picked up and watched both seasons of that, and it's an awesome show. Really, really well done. Love the story, love the show. The environments are great, and it's definitely one of my favorites too. It'd have to be in my top 10 list for sure, maybe top 5. Fallen Skies is one I recently picked up that I'm going to watch all of and review. Great show as well. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, you know, if you're just counting like just straight up TV shows and not like, you know, if you're not counting mixed martial arts and UFC or any of that kind of stuff that may have had programs, yeah, The Walking Dead by far has to be my favorite, for sure. And I liked The Walking Dead comic book before I actually watched the television series. When I first read The Walking Dead comic book, I remember it was a bad situation. I started reading it, and I couldn't stop. I got addicted to it, and I stayed up. I lost sleep. I only slept for like 5 hours each night until I finished it and got up to the current time. I know that sounds really weird, but it was literally what happened. I read, like, I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, this isn't that good at first. And then I really got into it. I was like, oh, my God, this is amazing. You know, when they started killing off main characters, I was like, what? This is crazy. I gotta continue with this. And I just kept going and kept going and kept going. Looked at the clock, and I'm like, oh, my God, it's like 5 a.m. I got to wake up for work in, like, you know, 6 or 7 hours or something. I'll just read one more chapter, you know, and you just keep going, or one more book, one more comic, and you just keep going. And, yeah, I mean, I read the whole series about 60 to 70 issues were out at that point, over, you know, maybe 3 years ago or so. And once I got caught up, I was able to, you know, I actually read it back over a couple times later, but not all at once. But when I started reading it, I lost sleep. I had trouble waking up from work because I only slept like 4 or 5 hours, something like that. And then, of course, we heard that the television show was going to come out, and just became absolutely stoked for that. Halloween, when the first episode came out, local comic shop here in town had a get together at a bar, and I went to that with Jess, and I dressed up as Wolverine. It was fun, and she dressed up too as like Catwoman type thing. And then we watched it, the first episode, and I loved it. Right from there, I loved it. I'm like, I gotta watch this every episode. I started doing reviews for it right then and there the next day on YouTube, and right through till now. I mean, you know. My channel isn't 100% dedicated to The Walking Dead. A lot of people think it is. Like, they'll subscribe to me now and they'll be like, I thought you just did Walking Dead videos. Walking Dead videos weren't the first thing I did. The first thing I did was figure videos. I started with that. Then I went to mixed martial arts UFC videos, and then I did comic book videos and different stuff like that. And then I started Walking Dead videos because the show hadn't even come out when I was doing YouTube for a while. So it wasn't the first thing I did, but for me, it's not just watching the show. I love to watch a show and then review it and talk about it because I just get so excited about watching the episodes. I love to talk about them, hear what you guys have to say, read your comments, all that kind of stuff. And I think the best thing about, or what makes the Walking Dead television series the best, is it's true to the comic books, but it's not predictable. You know, one thing I hate about Game of Thrones, I absolutely can't stand it, is it's exactly like the novel. It's the same thing. Okay, I'm going to say there are no differences. I mean, the differences in Game of Thrones versus the novel is almost nothing. It's exactly the same, pretty much. Yes, there are different viewpoints, and little things will be changed a little bit, but the story is generally exactly the same. The Walking Dead, it's totally different, the television series. You have a character, Dale, last season, who died. In the comic books, he is alive through almost at least half the story, to the point of where we're at now. So he's alive for, you know, maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of time that he was alive in the television series, at least. Character like Shane died almost instantly in the comic books, and yet in the television series, he's a completely different character. You know, he's Rick's best friend, and all these, and you know, there's that, you know, lifetime, you know, of friendship between the two. Like they talk about high school, and they went to the same high school, you know, or was it grade school? I forget. I think high school. But you know, you get the sense that these guys were friends since the time they were kids. And look at what's happened and look how they've changed. And the thing that I think that's so brilliant about the Walking Dead television series and comic book is that it's realistic in that environment. It's realistic in terms of that world. It makes sense for, you know, all of these things to happen in that world. People start turning on each other. People start losing their humanity, like Shane and what he does in the second season, which is brilliant. You know, shooting that guy in the leg, leaving him there. Otis, leaving him there to be eaten, to get away, and you know, becoming this totally different person. And that kind of level of character development we don't normally ever see in you know, comic books or especially television series or stories in general. You know, you just don't see characters change like that so much. And to even stay on and see in the third season and going forward what's going to happen to Rick and how he's going to change even further. You know, this is your atypical good guy here. And in the second season, at the end of it, he killed 2 guys inside the bar. I mean, killed his best friend, you know, shot at the other guy. I mean, done all kinds of things to help his family survive. So killed at least 3 living people at this point. Yeah, and, you know, like, there's just so many great aspects to seeing the characters in The Walking Dead change and do it and have them do it in a sense that feels natural. It doesn't feel contrived, doesn't feel made up just to you know, suit the story, but feels like a natural progression towards something different entirely. I think is absolutely very interesting, and I am super stoked for the third season. They've been releasing the pictures of Merle and him coming back. I think that not having him, like adding him in the show, again, another character that was not in the comic books that is in the show, is amazing. And he's a great character too. Having his brother Daryl there, who also wasn't in the comic books. I mean, these are great additions to an already amazing story that really get me excited and interested for, you know, seeing the next season and staying on with the series and continuing to do videos about it, because it just, you know, it's its own interpretation. It's not predictable. You know, here's the thing I want to say. If the television show was exactly the same as the comic books, I might not even have started a channel. Because, or well, I would have probably done reviews, but it wouldn't be in the same capacity as it is now, where, you know, all these people are interested and they want to see what will happen next and this kind of stuff. There wouldn't have been any excitement. So while at first I wanted it to stay as close as possible as the comic books, I realize now that I was completely wrong about that. It should be its own interpretation entirely. It should be as different from the comic books as it can possibly be, because the most boring thing we'd ever want to see is the exact same thing that was in the comic books in the television series. That would just be so boring. Again, like Game of Thrones, you know, if you've read the books, yes, it's cool to see it in a live-action format with great environments and all that kind of stuff and acting, but it takes so much away from it because it's the same thing, and you know exactly what will happen, how it will happen, and in what way it will happen. Whereas this way, we still get to see all the great things of the comic book, but at the same time, we don't have any idea what's going to happen. You know, we can do prediction videos, and people will say sometimes, just read the comic book. That'll tell you, you know, no, it's not the same as a comic book. You know, we've seen already in the second season, and in the first season too, it's going to be completely its own interpretation, and I hope they take even more liberties with it, and they do whatever the hell they want to, adding Merle in there. You know, and anybody who disagrees with that and thinks it should be just like the comic book, do you not like the character of Merle? Do you not like Daryl as a character? Do you think that they should not be in there? You know, do you think that, like, all these other additions they made, everything they've done so far, I think is just improved on the comic book and the story we already have. Like, after another few seasons, will there really be any point to go back and reading the comic book series again? I don't know if there will be. I don't know if 5 or 10 years, like when I come back and want to, if I'm, bored or something, or I have a, weekend off or whatever, or it's raining or, snowing outside and can't really do anything and just kind of chilling inside, will I go back and read the comic book again? Or will I be like, no, I'll just put it in the TV series, Because, I mean, both of them, being that they're so different, you can experience both stories and get something different out of both of them. And that's great, rather than having them be exactly the same and just rehashing of the same story. That sucks. I like it when they make a difference. So anyway, I think that's long enough, about 15 minutes to explain why The Walking Dead. Oh, well, a couple other things too. It's thrilling, it's exciting, it's unpredictable. You don't know when a character's going to die. It's scary, it's psychologically interesting, philosophically interesting. What else? It makes you question morality. It makes you question people's ethics, humanity, society. I mean, do I need to say anything more? I don't think so. That's what this video, guys. See you for the next one later.